Our first reading today is rather interesting. From the outside perspective, it's one of those ones that it's hard to understand. Why would God ask this of Abraham? Why would God ask him to sacrifice his only son after it took so long for him to get that son, after so much trial and so much tribulation? But if we look at this with the Christian eyes, it becomes much more clear. In this, we see a foreshadowing of Christ and his sacrifice. Let's go through this story again. We see Abraham, who is asked to sacrifice his only son. So he leads his son up the mountain. The father leads the son, and the son is carrying the wood. He is carrying the wood for the sacrifice. What does that sound like to us? Of course, it sounds like Christ carrying the cross, carrying his cross up the mountain, up Golgotha to be sacrificed. And then when they're up on the top of the mountain, what takes the place of the son? When God stops Abraham from sacrificing his son, we see a ram caught in the thicket, caught in the thorns, his horns stuck in the thorns of the bush. Now, what does that sound like? The Paschal Lamb, Jesus Christ, who will carry a crown of thorns with him. This is a foreshadowing of the sacrificial act of Jesus Christ. In this, God was preparing us even then, even in the early days of Abraham, for the coming of his son. He is telling us what he didn't even expect of Abraham, what he stopped Abraham from doing, he will do for us. He will give his only beloved son as sacrifice, as a sin offering, so that we all might recognize God as our Father. So again, if we see this through the eyes of covenant, through the eyes of sacrifice, and through the eyes of foreshadowing Christ, suddenly a story that might initially have seemed one of an angry God demanding a great task, as a God of love, preparing his people even then for the coming of his Son. That is the love of God. We can see this even in the gospel today. Again, we see the Son going up a mountain and being prepared. He is transfigured before Peter, James, and John. And God announces that this is my beloved Son. Again, we see a foreshadowing. The beloved Son is going up the mountain. The mountain is always a place of importance. Whenever someone goes up a mountain, it means we need to pay attention. Something important is about to happen here. So once again, the Son goes up the mountain and something amazing happens. He is revealed to the apostles. Just like after the resurrection, he will be revealed to the world. So we can see in all of these readings that even in these little ways, God is preparing the path. He is giving the clues. He is laying the breadcrumbs. He is putting in place the way which we are supposed to look at Scripture, the way we are supposed to understand the world, to see the world through that Christian lens. Because if we see the world in that way, we can see that everything is created for us, that God created the world to be a good and holy place, that he sent his Son among us to raise us up and to make us into something more. If we can see the world, if we can see Scripture, if we can see our neighbors through this lens, suddenly the world becomes a much more endearing place, full of love and full of providence.